This episode is brought to you by the Founders Club, the premier community for founders pursuing excellence in the mind, body, and of course, business. The club is home to over 750 founders who are actively building stronger companies and better lives together. Through curated masterminds, destination retreats, and private events, members gain access to world-class insights, connections, and experiences designed to help them perform at the highest level. So the average founder in the club is doing between $5 and $50 million a year in revenue. So if you're ready to surround yourself with like-minded entrepreneurs who push you to grow and excel in every area of life, visit foundersclubofficial.com and apply to become a member today. Let's go. Okay, we're just going to get right into it. We have such a special guest. Thank you, Karen, for coming today. This is going to be phenomenal. I think we're going to talk about literally everything because there's a wealth of knowledge inside of you. But right before we started recording, for the people that are just kind of tuning into this conversation, we were just talking about boards and we were talking about masculine and feminine and what's going on in the world and what you did at Dell, and it's just incredible. And the truth is, I want to just keep it going. I do want to keep it going, but I want to give people a little bit more of a sauce, a little bit of history of your journey, because as we've done our research, there's one word that really stuck out to me. And it's a word that I carry so passionately within every single thing that I do, because when I sat and did this, what is my superpower exercise back when I was 18 years old, there was only one word that I made up that now a lot of people use. And I don't know if it was my first time, but it just came to me, was I said, I'm not the smartest guy, I'm not the strongest guy, I'm not the most talented, I'm certainly not the most educated, but I got more soul than anyone else. And I will outsoul any of my competitors. I'll outsoul anyone. Because it's like, I always said it's like that little light inside of Iron Man. I have unlimited energy. People say, where do you get all your energy from? And I'm just like, I get to do this. I'm dancing. I get to do the dance every day. And when I read about how you became this soul and developed and nurtured a program within Dell and beyond, it was like, wow, this is going to be amazing. So thank you for coming. But I want to kind of open up the kimono and allow you to give people an inside look of how you got to this point.
Okay. So you want me to start in my childhood?
Yeah, let's do that.
All right, we'll go early days. So
okay.
I was raised in a very small town in Pennsylvania, a town called Penargil, Pennsylvania, 3,000 people on a good day. I was one of 4 siblings. My father was an airline pilot for United.
Wow.
My mom had a college degree, but she had elected to stay home. We lived on a 150-acre farm, a sustainable farm where we had kind of 2 gardens and worked hard and great work ethic. And my parents really raised us with this notion of faith, family, hard work, giving back. And that's, a really critical part of kind of my foundation and who I am.
Wow.
I was a little tired of the small town when I started to apply to colleges, so I decided to apply to the largest university in the state of Pennsylvania. So I applied to Penn State and I got into Penn State. My parents are Penn State grads. Our family is a big kind of Penn State family. And it was the best 4 years of my life. I ultimately ended up meeting my husband when I was a summer intern at Merck. And he was a little bit older than I was, but he was cute and mature, and he knew how to treat women. And, when you're a 20 or 21-year-old kind of guy in college, there's not very many of them, honestly, that really know how to treat women. And he did. We had a mutual boss at the time, and the boss said to Tony, keep your hands off the summer intern. And 4 days later, we were having our first date at the top of the World Trade Center, windows of the world. And this coming May, we'll celebrate our 40th wedding anniversary.
That is beautiful.
So that's a little bit about at least that time in my life.
When did you know that I always find like there's always like a pivotal moment. There's like a moment where you get to go all in. And was it this summer intern, was there something that clicked for you where you kind of felt there was a calling for where you wanted to see your career go? Or did one thing just lead to the next? Like, what was it for you that you felt like pulled towards it, like magnetized towards building a meaningful career?
Yeah, Aaron, when I graduated, it was during the time where women would graduate, they would go to work, they would have
Mm,
children, and a lot of them would stay home.
mm-hmm.
And I was never wired like that. As a
You
matter
didn't
of
want to
fact,
be a stay-at-home mom?
I did not want to be a stay-at-home mom. I have a lot of
Mm,
respect for stay-at-home moms. My kids tell me I'm a better mom because I'm not a stay-at-home mom.
mm-hmm.
And I think through my career, even at Penn State, I was president of my sorority.
Mm,
And I was just always kind of drawn to leadership positions, and I thrive on change, and I want to do good things in the world, and I want to work with teams that love to work for me, and I'm competitive and I love to win. So I was a bit unique, and maybe
mm,
being a stay-at-home mom was one of those things where I would just get bored after 3 or 4 months and I would just want to do
mm,
something else. So I think it was a series of early leadership roles starting in college, ultimately then at Merck. When I was at Merck for about 10 years in ivory tower, so-called staff support roles in supply chain and
mm,
marketing and new products planning, Merck said to me, my boss said to me, hey, we're pulling you out of these ivory tower roles and we're going to go move you to Wilson, North Carolina,
wow.
where you're going to run one of our manufacturing and packaging facilities there. And I had never run an operation. I didn't even really know what it was, entailed. But it's where I learned where the real work in this world is done. The real work in this world is done by people that either face off directly with customers and deliver directly to their customers, or it's people who make things.
Mm,
And I led a team of 1,000 or so individuals that were
wow.
packaging operators and mechanics and
Mm,
rotating shifts. And you realize in that world, they don't care at all where you go to school, whether you have an MBA. They just want you to treat them fairly, make a decent paycheck, and remove obstacles that stand in their way. So I learned during those early days at Merck also that that's where the real work is done. And I learned servant leadership,
mhm.
which I think is part of kind of my soul like, humble, authentic personality that I have.
How old were you at the time when you were like managing or 1,000 people? Like when this came to you,
30?
yeah, so fairly
30,
young
yes.
in your career, massive
Yes.
opportunity. You
Yes.
mentioned you're one of four.
Right?
Where are you in four?
Middle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's where the competitiveness comes from.
Right. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, I'm four out of five. So extremely competitive
Right.
and hate to lose. And
Right.
a lot of that, I find that so interesting because I would never would have said you were going to be 1 out of 4 because it's usually a little bit different. Um, you mentioned servant leadership, and I'm obsessed with leaders. I think there's so many different ways to do it, and we've seen every single way, every single type of cutting the cloth somehow become successful. There's no perfect way to do it. But when you're 30 and you're leading 1,000 people, there's a lot of limiting beliefs there. Like I can only imagine stepping into that role. You know, what kind of mindset did you feel like you had to have to actually step into that and obviously do an incredible job? But stepping into that role is very scary.
Hmm.
And what did you do to kind of give yourself the confidence to really lean into that and avoid the limiting beliefs? Because anyone stepping into that role would be like, this is nuts.
Right.
There's 1,000 people
Right.
here. I am this random person that just showed up now, and I'm the new boss, and you all got to listen to me. But I promise I'll serve you well.
Right. Right.
What was the message you were telling yourself?
Well, first of all, I made mistakes. So
Yeah.
you learn a lot about leading people early on in your career by the mistakes that you made. One of the biggest mistakes that I made when I was there was the plant was not unionized. It was one of the few plants in the Merck system that was not unionized, and they were very proud of the fact that it wasn't unionized. And I thought I had this great idea. We're going to save all this money and drive all this efficiency by making the mechanics work rotating shifts. If you know anything about kind of operations, there's people that are on the kind of front line of operations, and then there's the mechanics, and they're just a different breed. They're smart. A lot of them are engineers, or they want to be engineers. I mean, they are the secret sauce of kind of keeping that manufacturing plant running. And I went to them with this great idea of working, rotating shifts. And they said, we're not doing it. And if you force us to do it, we're going to unionize.
Wow.
Well, as soon as the Merck so-called system started to hear about this potential unionization thing, I pretty much said to myself, well, that doesn't sound like a very good idea. So I went to the mechanics and I said, look, here's the problem I'm trying to solve. We got to take X millions of dollars out. You don't want to do rotating shifts. How should we do it? And you learn that the best answers come from the people who are actually doing the work. And, to this day, I still feel that same thing. I have this kind of mantra around, ask the frontline workers, ask the admins. You want to know what's really going on in a company, ask those two. So my journey was really around mistakes, listening, leaning on the values and the principles, that I was raised, realizing that, hey, you're not the smartest person in the room. You might be the highest ranking person in the room, but that doesn't mean you have all the answers. And if you can figure out how to bring the best out of individuals and get their help in solving the problems that you're trying to solve, you'll be in a better place.
That's so powerful. Like sometimes defining the problem that we're trying to solve and going to everyone and saying, hey, this is the problem we're facing. And this was the idea I came up with, but I don't know if it's the right one.
Right.
How would you guys solve it? And collectively, you build almost a brain trust. It's very similar to what the Navy SEALs do when they're preparing for a mission. It's like they label out the mission, what they want to accomplish, and then everyone kind of comes together trying to figure out how.
Right.
And there's no, like, the commander doesn't get the final say. They all have to figure it out how. How does this incredible opportunity at 30 lead to you eventually working directly with Michael Dell?
Oh my gosh. I was so fortunate and so blessed. So Merck moves my husband and I and our only son, then we have 3 children, to Wilson, North Carolina. My husband, about 6 months in, gets a great job at Citibank. And after 2 years or so of him leaving every Sunday, coming back every Friday, because he was working out of the Tampa, New York offices of Citi, we just kind of sat down and had kind of a come to Jesus discussion at the kitchen table and said, something needs to go. You work in a manufacturing plant, you're working 7 by 24. He was gone. Our son, Alex, was 2 or 3 years old at that time. So I decided to follow him to Citibank. And I was at Citi for 6 hours. And I realized that I had made the worst career mistake of my entire life. Wow. I came from a very nurturing, caring company like Merck. Go to Citibank. Citibank's very political, at least back then, very political, very highly relationship driven. CEO would say one thing, his leaders would say, I'm not doing that. And I'd be like, he's the CEO, right? I come from that kind of mentality. Anyhow, I was at Citi for about 3 years, worked for a wonderful woman, big reason that I decided to stay as long as I did. But I was not happy. And my husband, Tony, came home one day and he said, look, you're making everybody around you miserable. If you don't quit, I'm going to go in and quit for you. So I went in the next day and I quit.
Wow.
I then went on maternity leave for about 6 months, and 3 months into maternity leave, I get a telephone call from an executive recruiter at Dell. Wow. And I said, great company. I was fascinated by what Michael Dell was doing. I said, great company. I'm not moving my family to Texas. He said, Austin is not Texas.
Yeah, of course.
Have you ever been to Austin, which I know
Yeah,
you have?
yeah.
That's true. And it was an incredible 21-year ride. Never in my wildest dreams
Wow.
did I ever think I would, start as a director of demand supply, ultimately work my way up, get a telephone call one day to be chief marketing officer, working directly for Michael. And I worked for him for 8 years, and he's an incredible leader. He's humble, he's authentic, and he was a huge champion of mine.
What's up, founder to founder fam? I just want to quickly pause here and thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of this journey. Starting a podcast is no joke, and the fact that hundreds of you listen every single week means the world to us. We want to continue to bring better and different and unique conversations to you to give you the most amount of value. Our only ask is that if you enjoy the pod, to please just share it with a friend, and most importantly, leave a comment, DM us, give us any sort of feedback. This entire production is for you, so if we can make it just 1% better, we will. We love you all. All right, let's get back into the pod. What is your favorite story of Michael Dell?
My favorite story is when he offered me the chief marketing officer role, Aaron. I was running public marketing. I was in India with my boss, Paul Bell, at that time.
Wow.
We were at a strategy meeting. My boss, Paul, pulls me aside after dinner and he said, I need to talk to you. Which, when your boss does that, that's never a good thing, right?
Usually a really bad thing.
Exactly.
We're in India. Oh my God.
What did I do wrong? Sorry. And Paul proceeded to talk to me for an hour to convince, he basically said, look, Michael's going to call you. Michael's going to offer you the chief marketing officer role. I said, I don't want it. And Paul spent an hour trying to talk me into it. Finally, I said to Paul, I'm going to go up to my hotel room. I'm going to call my husband. I'm going to talk to him about it. He's always been a great kind of coach and mentor for me. So I did that. I called him. It was probably 2 a.m. in the morning.
Wow.
I said, hey, bud, which is what I call him. I said, Michael's going to call me. Michael's going to offer me the chief marketing officer role. And I don't want it. And he said to me, are you the most effing stupidest person in the entire world? He said, you have an opportunity to work for the most iconic tech leader. With that, my cell phone went off and I didn't recognize the number. So I hit ignore, only to find that he's pretty persistent. He called back 30 seconds later. I said to my husband, I think I got to take this call because I think it's Michael. And I answered the phone and he said, so how does it feel to be Dell's next chief marketing officer?
Wow.
And I said, can I ask you a question? And he said, yeah, sure. I said, why me? There are so many other talented marketing leaders at Dell. And why do you think I am the best person to do the job? He said, oh, that's really easy. He said, I love what you're doing in public marketing. You have an unbelievable ability to get stuff done. And you are the most customer-centric executive that we have at Dell, bar none. And I said, okay, I'll take the job. That was a Thursday. Monday, I'm in the first executive leadership team meeting, and it was a great ride.
Wow. Right before we hit record, we talked about the word soul. And I think that is something that not only did you champion, but I find it to be oftentimes, at least in the startup world, a difference between success and failure at the end of the day. And how did soul come into your role at Dell? Because I feel like, you just mentioned it. Michael clearly saw that early on with saying you're customer-centric, which means, you have a connection to the customer. And you clearly had that earlier on when you, at 30 years old, you're stepping into this 1,000-person plant and you can connect to the mechanics, you can connect to everyone on the line, really understand them, show up for them. When did soul really become centric for you in your role with Dell?
I realized, especially in the marketing role, that one of the biggest gaps we had was connecting the company's purpose to 100,000 employees.
Wow.
And I've always believed individuals want a reason to come to work other than collecting a paycheck and watching the stock price appreciate.
Mm.
And I made it my mission to connect the purpose of the company, the great stuff our technology can do, to every individual and how they thought about their job.
Mm.
And we did it initially by rebranding the company and kind of trying to figure out, like, what is the soul of Dell and what do we
Mm.
stand for? And if Dell didn't exist, what wouldn't have
Mm.
happened in the world? And through that kind of exploration, you very quickly get to, which is where we got to, which is kind of technology for good.
Mm.
And that gave us the platform then to say, okay, well, who are our customers and how do we enable them to embrace and unlock all of the potential that technology can do in their lives?
Wow.
So that's when we started the Dell Women's Entrepreneur Network.
Mm.
That's when we went out and did programs with, at that time, was a human genome startup
Mm.
nonprofit called TGen, Translational Genomics. That's when we started all kinds of programs for children, education, school teachers, veterans, military. And if you can translate what a piece of Dell technology or a data center or something like that is doing from the mind of the mission
Mhm.
that these customers and corporations are attempting to do, I can't tell you how excited employees get about, now I understand why being a salesperson supporting state and local government or K through
Mhm.
12 or really means. So
Wow.
that became a real part of our marketing strategy, clearly, anchored to kind of the individual and the leader that I was and still am, and really gave employees this kind of purpose, sense of being for getting out of bed in the morning.
It's so powerful because so many times I speak to just incredible marketers or CMOs. And I remember even during our acquisition, like one of my check boxes was to spend a day with the current CMO of the parent company. And the topic of the conversation is how we go out with marketing, right? Like, this is our Super Bowl ad, or this is what we're planning on doing in the world. And we're going to sponsor this athlete and do this campaign. And here's the calendar. And speaking to you is very much resonates with me because you're talking about aligning the company internally with our outward mission. And instead of having one person trying to market this massive organization, you now have tens of thousands of
Right.
people
Right.
all aligned on a core value and a
Right.
core mission. And it starts to seep into every single thing we do, regardless of what you do.
Right.
And to me, it's like, that is true marketing.
I agree.
And it starts from within as opposed to just going out. Do you feel like a lot of executives or marketers today don't start by going in before they go out?
I think it's getting better.
Yeah.
I think it's better. I think back then, especially in the technology
Mm.
field, the big things that you would see on marketing ads and things like that would be all this chest pumping crap on things like number one here, number one there,
the
blah, blah, blah,
best.
I'm the best, fastest, those types of things.
Yeah.
And part of it, honestly, Aaron, I also think was probably just the feminine side or the female side, because, women are a big part of the Dell customer base. And I'm like, I hate to break it to you, but they don't really care about speeds and feeds. They care about you enabling, what it is that they want to do. So, so I do think it's getting better. I will tell you that I do think one of the biggest opportunities that I tell other CMOs or marketers is get out with customers. If you are not meeting customers every single week, and look, there were predecessors of mine that would never meet with customers. I mean, like, how do you even know how to market to them? And no, we don't need to, and I'm like, they're ringing the cash register. These are, so you talk about even brand ambassadors, we had 100,000 of them at Dell. You turn millions of customers onto your brand. And and they love your brand, I mean, that's so incredibly powerful.
Wow.
But you got to be where they are. You got to be speaking their language. You got to be helping them with their business opportunities, and you just got to care about them. And that was another part of what I did. And I also think today marketers need to be spending time with customers and employees. That's where the rubber hits the road.
Mhm.
You get to them, you'll unlock the secret sauce.
I don't know, Ned is back there, but this, I do a whole keynote on what you just said.
Oh, wow.
Ned, isn't this nuts? When we started Hush, we had no money. I had $4,000 of DJ money, and we scaled it really, really quickly. And everyone's like, "What did you raise?" We never raised anything. I didn't know how to raise. I was 21, and everyone's like, "How'd you do it? How'd you do it?" And we launched a mattress, and the mattress we beat Casper's launch in Canada by $500,000.
Wow.
The first, we did 1.5, they did about $1 million, but they spent like $700,000 on marketing. We spent less than $2,500. And everyone's like, "How'd you do it? How'd you do it?" And I was like, "I didn't do anything." My co-founder and I sat there on the phone and we called every single one of our customers saying, "Hey, we're making a bed. What does it need to be? What does it need to have? Because we know you sleep on one. It's not ours. We don't sell one yet." Right. And they're like, "Oh, it's got to be cooling. It's got to have springs. And we want to have it this. And it's got to be easy to ship. And I got to be able to flip it. And it's got to last 10 years. We're like, "Okay, no problem." Then we call them back in 3 months, say, "Hey, here's a photo. This is what we're working on. What do you like? Should it be black? Should it be white?" 80% vote black. "All right, guys, we're going to do black." And everyone's like, "Awesome." And after a year, we're like, "All right, we built exactly what you said for us to build. Here it is." And they all bought it.
Right.
It's
It's not that hard, right?
It's not that hard.
Right.
And we just did it with pillows. We did like all along the way. And then when we sold the company, no one wanted another pillow or blanket. There's a million of them.
Mm-hmm.
They bought the community.
Right.
That was the sauce. Right. And to be honest, after acquisition, that's what kind of leaves, because no one's willing to sit there and be like, "Hey, thanks for supporting us." But it's so true. It's like, we spend all this money on data and analytics, and all these things are important. But like sometimes just picking up the phone and the person that literally just gave you money, just talk to them.
Right.
It's the secret sauce.
Right. 100%, Aaron. I would tell employees at Dell all the time, never forget you're in the people business. I know we sell technology, but we are in the people business. People, you need to know the people in order to sell the people the technology. And there's all kinds of flavors of people. All kinds of flavors of customers. We had consumer customers. We had large, big, complicated, big kind of global customers. We had hospitals. We had the full gamut of it. We had small and medium business kind of startups. You got to know your customers, and you got to know that these are people you're dealing with, and we're all in the people business.
I got to ask, where did this soul connection to your work, like where did that really come for you? Because you asked me early on, you're like, where did you become so soulful? And I'll answer that after. But like, where did you really become so soulful?
I wish I could point to one thing. I don't think it's one thing. I think it's a combination of how you're raised, the community of people that you surround yourself with, spouses, kids, family, friends, mentors, kinds of advocates. In my case, I saw a lot of leaders in the tech sector, some of which are pretty soulless. And I had the opportunity to work for one who, is a person of principle and ethics, and he has a soul. Yeah. And we would, talk about all of that. And then I think some of it is just from learnings and experiences and mistakes you make along the way. I think the other realization that at least I got to, and I got to it, whether it was when I was at college as president of the sorority, or whether it was as I moved up the ranks, whether it's at Merck or Citibank or Dell. As you ascend into these more senior level positions, you have an obligation to help others that aren't as fortunate as you are. And you got to pick where you want to focus your energies, because you could do that. There's a lot of misfortune in the world, and the world is getting, some days the world is getting to a better place. Some days I'm not entirely sure.
Swings.
Yes. But, I always felt that, gosh, if I could just figure out how to unlock helping women develop, helping underserved communities. Like I said, helping veterans with, some of what we could do. I think, a lot of it maybe is just inspired by kind of this faith-driven person that I am, and how much I just believe in a higher purpose. And
Yeah.
there's a reason that, God put me on this earth. And I don't think it's to just, generate incremental EPS every single quarter and
shareholder
things like
value.
that, right?
Yeah.
Nobody's going to talk about any of that when you're dead and any of that. So I think it's a combination of those things that have just kind of wired me this way.
One thing I've over the last year I spent so much time on is trying to figure out whether we're making, more myself, whether I'm making decisions for my head or for my heart. And I feel like in this world that we live in, entrepreneurship and business, we're forced into our head all day long because there's just so many inputs, so many outputs, and you have to think things through, but you have to think quickly. And oftentimes we make mistakes and then we regret it and we try to fix it. And I have really spent a lot of time operating over the last 2 or 3 years exclusively from my heart. And what I hear like from you is, we can stay in our head and we can make incredible decisions, but no one's really going to remember those because everyone can make good decisions. There's a lot of smart people out there. But something you'll be very proud of and you'll be remembered for is operating from your heart. Right. And that's the impact. Do you feel like there's, in today's world, because you're involved with so many businesses and you have so much outlooks and so many inputs, do you feel like we're trending more towards a soulful economy where people are really driven by their impact? Or do we feel like more people are just in their head, just trying to generate, whether it's shareholder value, just trying to make a ton of money? Because in my world, it's like 50-50. Like I see just like a handful of people that want to make a change and a handful of people that just want to make a ton of money.
Yeah. I think it's both. I'm in the process of writing a book.
Oh, amazing. Do we know what it's called yet?
I don't know what it's called yet, but it's going to be somewhere in this territory of you really can be successful and not lose your soul.
Ooh, I love that.
And it's geared towards 25 to 40-year-old young professionals, those that are anchored in faith. And look, I picked Christianity. I know you're Jewish. It's not going to be a religious book, but it is going to be one about spiritual values and how that kind of underpins it. But what I find this generation wants to know is, how do I figure out how to make all of these things in life work together? And how do I make money, generate financial security, which, we have. I mean, that's an important part of our lives. It makes life a lot easier when you're financially secure, but that's not the only thing in life. So I do think, I think the media is getting better. I do think there's too much focus on people that are a bit soulless, in my humble opinion.
I agree. Because it gets clicks.
Exactly. Yep. But I think there's so many human beings are just wired to be good people. And I think the more we can showcase that you can do both, you can have a heart and you can have a head. And the most successful leaders out there are the ones that are figuring out how to unlock both of those things. And I've had the opportunity to work alongside of great leaders who operated like that and have run incredibly successful companies. And it's because they care about culture as much as they care about, quarterly returns and annual returns for shareholders and all of those things. And I think done the right way, you can do both.
I want to talk a little bit more about this book, if you don't mind.
Sure.
I mean, I know you're in the process of it, but you mentioned like really writing towards like that middle-aged crowd, 25 to 40, trying to figure it out, trying to do everything, And at the Founders Club, we have this idea that entrepreneurs, the modern entrepreneur, doesn't just want to be full in one bucket. And an example of that is, we have people that apply and they're doing hundreds of millions of dollars a year and they don't get accepted. And they get very angry and sometimes they write things online and whatever. And what we try to come out with is saying, a modern day entrepreneur is one that really wants to be full in all of their buckets. And that's in their integrity, in their health, in their family, in their connection, in their community, and in their business, and in their relationships, and how they show up as a mother, a father, a sister, a brother. All those are important. It's so hard.
Right.
It's so hard to do all of those. And sometimes one takes away from the other, and it's like a dance. They're never all full, but we strive for that. And we're not willing to sacrifice one for the other. That's the biggest difference, is I'm not willing to have my health go terribly down just so I can make more money, and vice versa. When it comes to a message that you want to really leave people from this book, I know you're still writing it, but as you're writing it, what is one thing you're really thinking of, a message that you want the future reader to leave with as they eventually go and read this book once it's done?
The fact that what we just talked about is you can achieve success. You have to define and figure out for yourself what that looks like. And by the way, your definition of success is going to change over your life. So that's another message that I tell 25.
What does that mean?
Yeah, I mean, look, I spent the first 10 years of my career when I was at Merck and Ivory Towers, and I got my MBA at night. I was newly married, and it was all about success. It was about moving up, making money, getting promoted quickly. And then, like I said, all of a sudden they were like, you need to go to Wilson, North Carolina and, figure something like that out. So, that's when you start to realize it isn't all, just about success. Success in the, let me call it the financial, monetary type of way. And then you very quickly, you have children. You realize, there's just so many hours in a day. But what I really want the audience to leave with is this notion of, you can have it all. You just can't have it all at the same time. Every single moment of the day. I mean, life is full of trade-offs and decisions and relentless prioritization, and surrounding yourself with people who are going to help you, not hurt you when it comes to trying to achieve the things that you're doing. And I tell young professionals all the time, don't stop obsessing over the next job. Your career is a 40-year journey. Your life hopefully will be a 85, 90, 95-year journey. And you just need to think about playing the long game and cutting yourself some grace and some slack, that if, life throws you a curveball or two, you might have to, pivot student body right or student body left, or, do something you never thought, you would have able to do, but just keep going.
That is so powerful. Stretching out the timeline on things is something that, I mean, I can for sure attest. In my 20s, I was like, I need to do it now. I need to hurry up, and we were 4 years into business, and I was like, I gotta sell this thing. It's 4 years. I've been doing this forever, and in hindsight, it was quite funny because things take long. And now, a second go around with Founders Club, it's like, I want to do this for 50 years. And like, our decisions always come back to like, is that going to benefit us in 49 years from now? If the answer is no, we don't do it.
And life's going to throw you a curveball. I mean,
sure.
Something's going to happen, right?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you never, right? Married, death of a parent, job you're not going to get. Life threw me and, my family lots of curveballs. But what I've found really interesting, Aaron, in this book that I'm writing, I interviewed as part of it about a dozen sitting or former CEOs or C-suite executives.
Wow.
And ones that have inspired me over the years, that I feel like, again, has this really kind of like spiritual head and heart type of approach. And we invariably get into this conversation around failure.
Wow.
And curveballs. And one individual said to me, who went through a fairly significant kind of curveball in his life, he said, there's two types of people that manage through life's curveballs. There's those that sit back and go, God, why is this happening to me? And can't get out of that woe is me death spiral.
The loop.
And then there are others that say, all right, this is happening to me. Now, what am I going to do about it? And I find, those are the individuals that make it clearly. You just keep moving forward. And, you think about, gosh, how many different curveballs have been thrown your way?
It's like every week.
Yeah, thrown my way, big ones, small ones, those types of things. But, your ability to pick yourself up, keep moving forward, learn from it, incorporate that into, whatever thinking you have and everything, I think is important.
It's so important. The mindset it serves you in the most difficult times. I often say to people the same thing about community. I say, you want to have a community when you don't need one.
Right.
Because when you need one, it's usually too late.
Right.
And it's the same thing about your mindset. You want to have a strong mindset, a long vision. When there's good times, it's easy. Yeah, everything's good. But when you get a curveball and you're really tested and you feel like everything's going to fall apart, that's what you really rely on. I read somewhere that you spoke about kind of unlocking a knot in your stomach on a daily basis. And when I think of that, I think of like almost like an anxious moment, really. Talk to me more about that. What does that mean? That like, I think it was the direct quote was, you believe people should have at least one knot in their stomach throughout the day.
Yeah, I just think it keeps you grounded. I mean, I've always had this like insatiable curiosity to know what else is going on and figure out the next thing and stuff like that. And maybe that knot in that stomach is just that, wow, I really, really need to learn a whole lot more about AI, because that knot in my stomach feels like I'm not an expert.
Behind.
I'm falling. I feel like we all do.
Everyone feels like we're falling behind. Everyone's amazing at it, and I suck.
And everybody has this like AI knot in their stomach, right?
Yes.
I think the other knot in their stomach is just this paranoia about, are you giving your best? And I used to sit back. I'm a big people watcher, and I sit back and I watch how people interact. In my early days of being on Michael's leadership team, I was quite curious about just the dynamics of the team and who was effective and who wasn't effective, and what did they bring to the table, and what do I need to be bringing to the table? So there's almost this paranoia about being relevant.
Wow.
Was always something too that I was always curious about.
So interesting.
And I feel like I still do it now, even with these boards that I'm on. I mean, some really great public companies, and there's such rich learning when you're sitting around the table with 10 leaders, all successful in their own right, different experiences, different positions, some CEOs, some CFOs, some policymakers, some entrepreneurs. And you just listen to them and you're like, I could learn more about that, or they're so much better at that than I am. And again, maybe it's just this humility knot you have in your stomach or whatever it is. But I think it helped to keep me grounded, curious, and keep learning, as you get older and older.
Yeah, when you surround yourself with like-minded people, it's like there's an immediate kind of like an affinity and an appreciation for when they share knowledge, because there's so much behind that.
I love it.
It's like there's one sentence and you're like, that was 20 years right there in one line.
Right.
And it's summed up perfectly and easy to digest. And you're just like, I got to sit with that line for a little bit because that was a lot.
Right. Well, you do a fantastic job in unlocking those kinds of insights in the podcasts, that I've listened to. I mean,
I appreciate that.
They're really remarkable.
It's always, people always ask me, do you get tired of it, because we don't monetize it or anything. And I was like, no, it's like one of my favorite things to do, because I get to learn so much and inherit so much value. And I love people as well. It's actually one of my things is like soul entrepreneur, but like I need to watch people. I need to see how they interact. It's really important to me because it says a lot about me, the way I feel about their interactions, and also says a lot about them. And it's just like, I grew up in a crazy household, so I had to my dad drove a truck for 28 years. My mom used to clean houses. There's 5 boys in the house, mayhem, and people say, how did you become so attuned? And it's like, honestly, not in the best ways, but like I would judge, how stressed out my dad was when he came home from work based on the type of footsteps he would take coming into the house.
Wow.
So it's like people are like, how did you become so attuned to people? It's like, 'cause I would listen for like the speed and the weight in the steps
Wow.
to know, like, can I piss him off today or not? You know, like,
It's like, that's
am
a
I
hard
gonna
job. That's a hard
am I gonna
job.
jump on him and like choke him out as a joke, or it's like I gotta like let him, you know, decompress. And as a kid, it's like you don't realize what you're doing, but you're paying really close attention, and
Right.
it creates anxiety and all that stuff. But it's just something that I become attuned to. And when you mentioned it, you know, being in a boardroom or being in an executive meeting, watching people how they operate, I'm curious if you've noticed over your years a specific type of character trait that always tended to lead to more success in the world versus maybe a character trait that oftentimes didn't lead to as much success. So what I'm trying to say is, like, did you have and develop the ability to look at how someone operated based on what they did and be like, that person's going to do really, really well here versus someone else? And most people wouldn't see it on day one, but
Yes.
I know that you developed that kind of ability. What was in that, the person, give me both. What was in the ability for someone to do really well? Like, what character trait did they have versus someone that you knew ended up wouldn't do as well?
I think the leadership character trait that is so underestimated and underappreciated is humility.
Mm.
And I think the opposite of the character trait, that if a leader is arrogant, thinks they're the smartest person in the room, the rules don't apply to them, will ultimately go into a death spiral.
Wow.
So I would always, you interview for, are they capable? Are they smart? They have a good track record,
Right.
blah, blah, blah. And then I just look for humility. And if I see arrogance, I won't hire them. I mean, I've been on boards where we've had to let board members go.
Wow.
And arrogance, they just thought they knew more than the leadership team, and they thought they knew more than the other board members. And I think humility is a gift, a real gift.
Do you have an example that you can think of where, like, someone or even yourself, like, really showcased a deep sense of humility that, like, really struck like a chord with you? For me, I'll share a small example. Like, during our acquisition, the 2 days before we were supposed to close, the CEO of the company called us like frantically, like 3 or 4 times. And I got so much anxiety, I didn't want to answer. I was like, oh my God, this cannot be good. 4 calls, 2 days before closing, like something's really bad. And then we jumped on a Zoom. He was crying. And I was like, oh my God, it's over. Like, it's not happening. I already told everyone it's happening. It's not happening. Like, it's like my head, I don't even remember the first few words that he said, because I like blacked out. I was like, it's not happening. But in short, he was sharing that the board expressed like a tremendous amount of fear, and that he stood up and said, like, these are my guys. I'm going to trust. I'm going with it. Like,
so the board did not want to do the acquisition?
The board had cold feet, and
Wow.
he, as a CEO, stood up and said,
I love. Good for him.
I'm doing it. And he was just expressing the fear to us. He's like, I'm scared. I'm terrified. Just want to let you guys know. Yeah. And like, in my head, I was like, oh my God. Like, I was like going to start crying. I'm like, we're crying 2 days before closing. Like, this is crazy. But you could have just not told us anything and kept it inside and said, yeah, don't worry. The board has some fears. I got you. Don't worry. Like, be happy, celebrate this. But like, that's a call I'll never forget. And it created a bond between us, that the hard times that did follow, because it was inevitable. The curveballs came. No matter what we said to each other, if there was anger and fear, no matter what happened, we both knew in the back of our head that there's a deep sense of trust. And it served us because of that level of humility, to him say, like, my neck is on the line and I'm terrified. Right. And I honestly, I think about that all the time. Yeah. When I went through hard times, I'm like, I'm going to lean in and just show my cards.
That's really, it's so powerful for a CEO to do that. Quite unusual at times to do that. My favorite one is Jen Rumsey, who's a relatively new CEO at Cummins. So your dad probably knows Cummins because he's a truck driver, and Cummins, powers a lot of the medium duty, heavy duty kind of trucks around the world. And Jen is an incredibly humble, authentic, transparent leader. And she will come into, steering through COVID. trying to steer around all of the kind of changing regulations that are happening now, steering around some of the social kind of challenges and pushback that, great companies who are trying to, change environmental policies and, diversity policies and those types of things. And she is so transparent with us in the board around, I'm concerned about this. It was this period of time was a really, really hard period of time for me.
Wow.
I just want you to know that. And she will show us a couple of board meetings ago. She actually played for us a song that she played coming on stage at one of her town hall meetings, which was all about joy and happiness and finding good in people and those types of things. And I'm like, when was the last time you saw a CEO coming on stage to a song like that? But again, I think it really, really speaks to the humility and the authenticity and the transparency. And you know what? We would leave those meetings and we'd go, we have even more confidence in her.
Wow.
That she has shared that. And that's how she shows up with her employees too.
Wow. That is so amazing. What an incredible message, because I think that can be true whether you're running a Fortune 100 or 500 company, or whether you're running a startup with 10 or 15 employees. Even more important in a startup, actually, because oftentimes founders are scared that if they share, we're in a cash crunch, you have fear if you say that to leave. Oh my God, what? I'm not going to get paid, or I might not get paid. Like, what does that mean?
People are depending on me.
It's a lot of fear, right? As opposed to like the slightly less fear in like a Fortune 100. You're like, I'll get paid, but maybe I don't have a future here. You know, it's a little bit of a different thing.
Right. That's why I think it's great what you're doing with this community of entrepreneurs, because as we were chatting about when we did a very similar thing with the Dell Women's Entrepreneur Network, and it was remarkable when you brought these like-minded, in my particular case, female entrepreneurs together. Yeah. And it was the most insightful, inspiring event because all I had to do was kick it off, Aaron, and then the magic would happen.
Yeah, it's amazing.
And we would let these women come on stage and they would talk about their learnings and their experiences. And invariably, you'd have one. We had one on stage in South Africa who her business had just gone bankrupt. She couldn't get funded. She wanted to start another company. She started to cry on stage. There were a handful of angel investors, female angel investors, that were sitting in the audience and stood up and said, come see us afterwards. We're going to help you figure out how to fund your business.
Wow.
So
it's life-changing.
Yeah, that magic just can happen if you just bring these communities of like-minded people together that, want to help each other.
One of the things I think about a lot is how important it is to be in community, but as from a human nature standpoint, how we become mirrors of our environment, no matter where we go. And, you've lived in multiple places, so you're able to kind of see that. When I was living here, I acted this way, or I ate this type of food and I worked out this way. And, I used to live in Toronto. Now I'm here and a little bit of colder weather today, and I'm just like, oh my God, it's cold. And my mom called me this morning. It's snow up to here. She's 16 layers. She's like, do you not remember this? It was 1 year ago. I'm like, oh my God, So we change so fast. We kind of like chameleons in a way. We mold into our environment. And I try to remind myself and also everyone listening is just, if that's true, and we know it to be true, and statistically, if the 5 people you hang out the most with all smoke at least 2 cigarettes a day, the likelihood that you smoke 1 cigarette in your life, rounded to the nearest number, is 100%. So if that's true about something as small as 1 cigarette, then it's probably true about every other layer in our life, whether it's how we show up as parents and kids and family and priorities and religion and faith. It's you want to have a strong faith, but no one around you has any faith whatsoever. It's very difficult, possible, but difficult as opposed to if everyone's in. So if that's true, and the easiest thing we can do is just insert ourselves into the future that we want to mirror, then why don't we do it? And I play with that thought every single night before bed. It's what is it? And I think, I don't know, but I'm curious your thoughts. It's I think there's fear. I think it's scary. I think it's not being welcomed. I think it's fear that we'll be judged, so it won't be good enough, or because you're measured in these communities sometimes, right? We try to like tell people, don't share your revenues. So you be at a table and some guy can be doing $1 billion a year and you can be doing $20 million a year, and it doesn't really matter in the conversations, in the context. But when you say that, it's immediately like, oh, I'm not good enough. You're better.
Right.
And I play with it every day and I don't know why. And so what do you think prevents some people from putting themselves in the environments that they know is and will be the reflection of the future they want in all buckets of your life, whether it's fitness or health or faith or whatever?
I think it's, I do think it's fear. I also think it's getting caught up in your comfort level and playing it safe.
Playing it safe.
And it's so, you find it. I find so many individuals just get in this grind and they can't figure out how to get out of it. And you're like, well, what's not working in this grind for you? Just literally having this conversation earlier today with someone who knows somebody who just can't break out of that grind. And it does take being intentional. It does take sometimes just, taking a big jump and going for it. And then I just think sometimes some things happen in your life that you're like, well, okay, I didn't really expect that. And so my Citibank example is a, perfect case in point where I was in a place, I wasn't very happy. People all around me were telling me to quit. My husband was going to quit for me if I, hadn't gone in and quit. Yet I was making a good paycheck. It was a company that had a decent reputation. We were living in Florida. We loved Florida.
Yeah.
So trying to sort through the whole aspect of, well, what part of it is really not making me happy? And do you fix that and throw everything else out? Or, what do you do type of thing. So I think that's the hardest thing, is trying to figure out how that whole ecosystem in your life works at varying points in time. And sometimes you're just going to have to accept that, hey, I'm going to stay in this job because it's given me some flexibility. I can stay in a place where my husband can also work. I'm closer to my parents. So I think there's a lot of that comes into your mindset around, when do you jump? When don't you? To me, it was always a combination of either something just kind of smacked me across the side of the head and I went, okay, well, there it is, right? There's the sign for me. Or you just get to a point where you're just like, this knot hole in my stomach is just not going to go away. And I need to do something about it.
So true. So when the knot in the stomach is the same knot every single day for a long period of time, you have to do something about it. It's the subconscious mind telling us something that we just can't ignore. Or you can numb it out, but it just stays there. One question my favorite question, and the audience loves this question, it's the question that we always ask at the end of the podcast is, if we were able to bring a younger version of yourself, you get to choose the age. Some people go, I'll bring 6-year-old Karen here, or 12 or 15. You get to choose, but you got to start by letting us know, how old the younger version of yourself is with us right now. And you were able today to share one message with her. What would that message be?
I would be 13 years old.
Wow.
Because I think that's a really pivotal time, especially for young girls. And I would have told myself, you need to have the courage to act. You need to have the confidence in knowing you're doing the right thing. And you need to do it with a compassionate heart.
Wow.
I think confidence, especially in girls, is the single biggest gift as a mom I can give my daughters.
Yes.
Men are wired for that, although, I like to think that our son Alex is much more like his father, who's a much more caring, gentle, soul of the earth, kind of patient individual. There's a lot to be said about opposites attract, by the way.
So you're less patient.
Yeah, nobody ever says, Karen's like the salt of the earth. They say that about Tony, and your children
That's
are
awesome.
a product of how you raise them. But back to the conviction and the courage and the confidence. I think confidence in women is something that every parent needs to help them with, because societally, it's just something that women are still fighting with. And I think social media is not helping.
Why not?
Because everything in social media is a comparison to this is great, you're not great, better. You need to be skinnier, you need to be smarter, you need to have a better job than me, and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, just do you. And it's, first of all, I told an audience last week at the University of Texas when they asked me, what's the single biggest advice that you would give me about just kind of being able to, keep all of this together? I said, get off social media.
Wow.
Or at least moderate it to the point that if, you're going to bed every single night and you're doom scrolling and you're making yourself feel like, I'm a crappy person and that type of thing, that's never going to help your confidence. Surround yourself by great people. Surround yourself by people that are going to unlock those things in your life that you might not know about yourself. Make some bets. Have the courage of conviction. Those are the things that are going to give you the confidence to be able to just do great things in your life and great things in the world.
I have to ask one more question, Mr. Nedrich, because you brought up such an amazing point. And throughout your work, you've supported women in so many different ways. It's clearly very important to you. But you're also a woman that's had an incredible career so far and continues to have an incredible career. And in today's world, the masculine and feminine dynamic proves to be slightly challenging for some women that have done very well for themselves. What would you say to potentially maybe a female founder or just a woman really chasing an incredible career who's maybe in their late 20s, maybe early 30s, finding it difficult maybe to find a match or someone that they feel really connected to? Was there a message that you would share with them when it comes to, prioritizing their career, prioritizing their relationships? Because for you, you've been married over 40 years.
Right.
You've done it so incredibly well. What's a message that you would share with them?
I think marriage is the most important decision you will ever make in your life. So marry right. I did. I have always had this notion of, as a woman, you should marry somebody that loves you just a little bit more than you think you love him or her. Marriage is hard. Marriage is hard, Aaron. I mean, it's hard. It's the most beautiful thing you will ever do. It is the hardest thing you will ever do. My husband and I, there's no question that we have thought about getting divorced, but just doesn't happen on the same day, fortunately. So it's just one of those things. And I would say, especially for young entrepreneurs today, marry somebody that is going to build you up, and you're going to build him up. Marry somebody that's going to tell you, like Tony told me early on when, we were walking on the beach, he said, "You're one of the most capable young women I have ever dated. Like, stop doubting yourself." And, marry somebody that's going to be your coach, going to be, your mentor. And then the other thing I would say is sometimes when you're trying the least, it just falls in your lap.
Yeah.
And if you can just, say, I'm going to put faith in a higher power and I'm just going to stop trying so hard and get off these dating apps and everything. I've talked to so many women about those are the times when, Mr. Magic just mysteriously shows up someplace and you're like, wow, look at that. I never thought I was going to meet that person here. So
So
that's the advice I would give them.
Wow. This has been amazing. Really. Thank you so much for flying in. I know the ice almost prevented that from happening because, Texas has a weird affinity with a little bit of snow, right?
We're much better at it now than we were, say,
in
4
Canada,
years
they got
ago.
like 40 inches the other day in my parents' flight. We're like, yeah, no delays.
Yeah,
We're
exactly,
going. No
exactly.
issue. Thank you so much for what you do for entrepreneurship and community. I find it very meaningful when people consistently over a long period of time show up for others. And I think for the people that are listening to this, if there's many messages, and this is going to be one of those podcasts, I will guarantee it now that people watch 3 or 4 or 5 times because there were so many messages. But the big message that I took away was how important other people are to you in your journey. And this really is a people game.
Right.
No matter what we're doing, it's always a people game, which is why I love that book, The Richest Man in the World, around the cashier at Walmart. Everyone in the town knew him, and it's everyone is equal and equally as important. It's specifically executives, leaders, founders, entrepreneurs, people that impact so many people with their work and with their time, to see that connection and to have humility, which is a big word, and to show up for others and to be there for others and to serve them beyond your own means, and often leads to actually even more means for yourself, but that's not always the goal.
Right.
And I think that's really, really magical. So I really want to thank you for coming and sharing that, because everyone listening is going to get a lot out of this podcast. I certainly did, which is why I do this. This is amazing. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me. And you're the real deal, Aaron, and what you're doing is really special and really, really unique. And I hope you keep doing it.
Thank you. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Founder to Founder podcast. And I have one favor, just one favor to ask. It's the only favor I'll ever ask from you. And if you liked what you listened to please like, subscribe, and please just leave a comment. Let us know what you think, how we can make it better. We are all in on delivering value to you. And all we ask in return is that you hit that subscribe. It goes a long way for what we're trying to build here. And as always, we post an episode every single Wednesday, so stay tuned, and thank you for tuning in.